Welcome to Conversations with Chuck Hester, a weekly podcast designed to inform, entertain, and introduce you to some really interesting and inspiring people. Today's episode is brought to you by Market Muse, the content platform where you can publish fearlessly using content intelligence. I'm your host, Chuck Hester, and my guest today is one of my favorite people in the world, and that's Drew Davis. Andrew Davis, as he's officially known, is a best-selling author and keynote speaker. And before building and selling a thriving digital marketing agency, Drew produced for NBC and worked for the Muppets. And trust me, we will have some questions in regards to that. He appeared in the New York Times and on the Today Show. He's crafted documentary films and award-winning content for tiny startups and Fortune 500 brands. Now, today, Andrew Davis teaches business leaders how to grow their businesses, transform their cities, and leave their legacy. And to his friends, and as his website URL indicates, aka Drew Davis, he's Drew. And welcome, Drew.
Hey, thanks so much, Chuck. I'm so excited. Here, applause for everybody.
There you go.
Putting this together, and thanks to Market Muse. That's so nice of them to sponsor this. This is awesome. I've actually never tried their product, so I'm going to check it out when we're done.
Check it out, man. I got a promo code at the end for you as well. And here's what we're going to do. And Drew and I talked about this basically because normally I have banners, but right now Drew's kind of in a little bit of pain because he's kind of sideways. But here we go. Watch this. Now he can stand up.
There we go.
There we go. Better. All right, man. So and we'll bring him back in as we go along. But Andrew, you and I have been knowing each other for a long time. As a matter of fact, we talked about this. I want to put this up real quick, and we'll have this conversation. But there we are, man. That is before COVID. That is Content Marketing World 2 years ago, right? And one of my favorite things to do, and I've done for the past 6 years, including virtual now, is moderate the keynote tracks. And on a regular basis, Drew Davis shows up with that. So we had a ball doing that. We were talking about before the show started how we miss walking the hallways and hugs and everything. Looking forward to getting back to that sometime this end of the year. We'll see how that all works out. So Drew, I'm gonna lead with the more fun question, I think, although all of them will be, and it's kind of a softball because you mentioned it earlier. You worked with the Muppets. You worked with one of my favorite acts in television, right? So had a ball. So were you produced, or what was your work?
No, actually, my job there, I was in charge of the workshop where they make the puppets for everything from Sesame Street to Bear in the Big Blue House and Muppets from Space, the movie that I worked on. I worked on Elmo and Grouchland, but I was basically in charge of the 40 artists that make the puppets and spend every day, putting them together, getting them set, and then going on the set and making sure they're dressed. They're called Muppet Wranglers or Muppet Designers.
There you go. And you've never, and this is the softball, you've never had an incident where you misplaced a Muppet, have you?
Well, it's so funny you should say that. I used to, Miss Piggy, is really kind of the diva of the workshop. I mean, everybody knows she's a diva. And every morning I would walk into the workshop and she would sit right across from me. I'd give Miss Piggy a hug. She had a full-time designer, by the way, a wonderful woman who for 30 years,
all she did.
Would design all her outfits. I mean, she was a real, prima donna. And I was supposed to send Miss Piggy to the Queen's birthday, I think it was. This must have been 1999. And so I put her in a box. We had these special boxes for her. I printed out the FedEx label. I sent her off. She was supposed to arrive the next day. And, Frank Oz called and said, where's Miss Piggy? And I was like, well, she should be there. I don't know. Check downstairs at the hotel. Nothing. Within hours, it was very clear that Miss Piggy was lost. Yeah, I lost Miss Piggy. So I immediately called FedEx. And to FedEx's credit, by the way, they assigned me like the most important rep they could find. And they were like, this is so important. You've got to find Miss Piggy. And we worked really tirelessly to try find her for about 8 hours. And we did not find her. So we actually took her on a plane on a British Airways flight overnight, nonstop from New York to London with a Wrangler. She sat in first class and she made it to the Queen's birthday safe and sound. And years later, the Miss Piggy was found, by the way. She was found at one of those luggage auctions in Tennessee.
I can't imagine you open up that case and there's a Miss Piggy and you go, wow, okay, this will do well at auction. I can definitely see that for sure.
Well, Have you ever heard of these? The less luggage auctions I want to go
yeah.
one day, but you don't know what's inside. So you look at the case and you're like, I'll bid $10, $20, $100. So somebody bid, and because it's lost luggage, it doesn't say what's on it, and it's not like we sent these out saying Miss Piggy's inside. So I don't know what they paid for Miss Piggy, but can you imagine finding an original Miss Piggy in one of those boxes? Yeah, here's a fun fact for you guys watching right now, and for you, Chuck. Every Miss Piggy head costs about $20,000 to make, and in one day of shooting, you'll go through about anywhere from 8 to 10 Miss Piggy heads because her lip splits at the corner.
Right.
And so she's a very expensive puppet to maintain, but she's amazing. I love Miss Piggy, big fan.
Wow.
Still am.
There you go. So, and we'll talk further about what I call the COVID blessings and the passion pivots. But so how does someone who is working in the Muppet Workshop and working as a producer with NBC and Today Show and the like, how do you become who you are today, which is the keynote speaker and the guru, if you will, on what we'll be talking about soon called the loyalty loop. But what's that transition look like for you, man?
Well, it was, to be honest, the late 1990s weren't the best time to actually work at the Jim Henson Company. They were struggling financially. It was kind of a difficult spot they were in. And after about 2 years, I was not enjoying the job at all. It was my dream job. Like, I always wanted to work there. So as soon as I got it, I thought, well, I'll be here forever. But it turns out, after 2 years, it just wasn't the right fit for me. And I had a bunch of friends that were making money that had worked in television and film, and they were working as marketers. And I was like, what the heck is a marketer? And they're like, we don't really know, but if you want to give it a shot, I know who to talk to. So I basically started working for a succession of startups in marketing, and realized pretty quickly that if you could write and you could tell a story, you could inspire people to buy stuff they didn't know they needed. And in fact, that's what I learned at the Jim Henson Company. The Jim Henson Company truly taught me the power of creating content that people fall in love with and then are inspired to buy stuff. No one needs an Elmo pillowcase or a Grover stuffed, doll, unless you fall in love with Elmo or Grover or Miss Piggy or Big Bird. And as soon as I realized you could do that, I started a marketing agency with a journalist friend of mine named Jim Costco in Boston. And then we ran that for about 12 years and sold it in 2012. And then after that, I wrote a book called Brandscaping, and I thought, what should I be doing next? And I had spoken a lot, by the way, as a lead gen tool for the agency. So I just started kind of taking those calls from people who were like, hey, we saw you speak last year. Do you want to come speak and talk about brandscaping? So fast forward, almost 10 years later, and that's all I do is just write books and go speak. So it's been a fun adventure, a journey, a quest, as I like to call it. But it's been really, every step has led to the next step in the journey, and it's provided me with knowledge and insight I didn't know I would need to use or could use in the next step of the journey. So it's been fun.
Wow. And I brought a CEO at the time of a digital agency with me to the last in-person content marketing world, and told him that if there was any, we had a list of all of the speakers that I was going to be moderating, but plus all the other ones. And I said, you got to see Drew. And it's interesting too, because on your AKA Drew Davis website, one of the things in the introduction is, and Drew has probably had more cups of coffee than you've had in the last 3 days. So the energy on the stage is something that comes from the performing. Quite frankly, it does. And you and I have mutual friends, some who have already been on and some who will be on, like a Marcus Sheridan or Tamsin Webster or Bob Bird. That it really kind of evokes what I've been talking about, which I call the passion pivot. And COVID blessing here is, man, I'm passionate about this. I'm working from home. Maybe it's time for me to go take this shot. And I'm having new clients come in. We're talking about a voiceover artist that I've got. I'm working with, anti-bullying folks and all kinds of really interesting people. And you asked me earlier about, because I did my passion pivot in July. Are you happy?
Yeah.
I am so dang happy in the process of doing that. And I know you are too, other than the fact, and probably story out of school, that your wife's ready to kick you out of the house. But other than that, I think we're in good shape with that.
Well, in fairness to my wife, when you travel, 200 days a year, she kind of builds her own little routine, and does her own thing. And I mean, it's not like she doesn't love me and want to spend time with me. It's been a lot of Drew, I think
It's
she would
enough.
say.
It's
And
enough
she
Drew for the
just needs a break. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's understandable.
Totally understand that. Yeah, when I was married and we had 3 kids, all girls, I used to set it up in such a way that I could travel during a certain week of the month. We'll leave it at that, man. But yeah, no, I can totally understand and relate to that. I want to get into one of my favorite topics, and I was mentioning content marketing world earlier, and especially the one 2 years ago where I was introduced to what you call the loyalty loop. And I'm going to read something here real quick, just to kind of do a quick intro on it, and then I want you to talk, because I know it's one of your favorite subjects. And this is from your website. We spend a lot of time telling our clients how different we are. By conducting an online search for services we provide, you'll quickly find that you and your competitors all sound the same. It's time we stop telling people we're different and start showing them you're different. It turns out one of the most effective ways to grow our business is not filling a funnel with low quality leads. God bless America. Instead, treating your loyal clients as your most valuable asset. It's time to exploit the loyalty loop. And I believe, and I'm not a swearer, but I think it was F the funnel, if I'm not mistaken, was a phrase evoked during that talk.
Well, I don't say a bad word, but somebody created the FU funnel, and it's got like tofu, mofu, and bofu content
Right.
inside of it. So I just showed the FU funnel because I mean, look, the funnel is an old idea. It was invented in 1898, and it's just we live in a modern marketing world that doesn't look like the horse and carriage world of the 1890s. And I think we need a new model to build our new businesses around, especially with wonderful tools like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. And we have an opportunity to really think about how people buy in a different way. And so the loyalty loop has been this like 4-year adventure to try to figure out if there is a better way to build a business than just raising awareness for the products we sell and getting people interested in them and then consider them, and hopefully they become a loyal customer or client. So yeah, the funnel I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah, I totally understand that. So walk me through the loyalty loop. I mean, what is because a lot of our folks that are listening are small business owners or entrepreneurs, and they've gone to every single seminar on how to do a funnel and all of that kind of stuff that goes on. So how does somebody implement a loyalty loop? What does that look like? What are the steps that you're recommending on that?
Let me. My Slinky is right here.
I made a mistake here in letting Drew not sit down. So I want you to know that this is how this happens. But anyway, go ahead, brother.
Does that work? Yeah. So look, the loyalty loop is basically just designed to help build better relationships that look like a spiral instead of a funnel. Like the whole goal is to not lose consumers, right? And your goal is to take the doubters at the top who have never worked with you and move them to believers at the bottom through a bunch of micro interactions. When the funnel was invented, we had to just rely on advertising and getting our message out there so that enough times if somebody needed something, they would think about our brand first, right? That's not the way it works anymore. And essentially all we need to do is focus on the micro moments that matter in these loyalty loops and invite people to make a small commitment to our brand. Just give us a small piece of information, and let's treat that information, that data or that time, as valuable as money, and create a great experience, a small experience for them, so that they say, wow, this is really different. I want to take the next step in the journey and move on to the next level of this micro relationship that we're building together. And so the loyalty loop is just focused on essentially doing 6 things. And in fact, I have all 6 drivers right here. These are the 6 loyalty loop drivers. And basically, in all the research I've done with all the companies I've looked at, the companies that are able to use these 6 drivers inside of a relationship as they're building relationship with people have these great emotional connections to the consumers they're working with, whether it's B2B or B2C. They just raise anticipation, or maybe they remove friction from one part of the journey. And it's all designed around looking different, looking different than and being different than the competition in the marketplace. Because it doesn't matter what you're looking for from a service provider or a product. they all do sound the same. The difference is the experience, and people will pay more for a great experience, up to 25% more in some cases in the B2B world for a great experience. So all you have to do is actually design a great experience, and the loyalty loop helps with that.
Yeah. And I think the example, if I remember correctly, the brand, you brought out a letter that you got from, I think, a Hyundai dealer, if I'm not mistaken.
Nissan.
Nissan dealer. Okay, cool. Like I said, of, hey, you know what? Your lease is coming up and now it's time
Yes.
to look at us.
Yeah. I call these moments of inspiration, Chuck. So like you have to imagine your client or your customer having a moment in their life that inspires them to go on a journey they never expected. And I got a letter from Nissan Finance that said, hey, your lease is up in 30 days. And I totally forgot. I didn't put it in my calendar. I wasn't thinking, oh, I should buy a car this month. I just completely blew my mind that my lease was already up. And that is a moment of inspiration. But these kinds of moments happen to us all the time, even in the B2B world. Think about it this way. Every time you send an invoice to a client, that is a moment of inspiration, because they get that invoice and they go, oh my gosh, you know what? We are spending a lot on XYZ. I wonder if there's a cheaper way to get XYZ done instead of paying these people every month. That is a moment of inspiration. Now, not always do they act on it and say, let me go see if there's someone cheaper, but you can get them to not think that way and provide a better experience if you know that it might create a moment of inspiration that sends them on a journey to hire someone else. So the whole goal of a loyalty loop is to define the moments of inspiration, the instances in time that send your clients on a journey or your prospects on a journey they never expected, and then immediately start building the right relationships. And content is one of the great ways to do that. Like after any moment of inspiration, what pops into your mind is a trigger question. So that lease letter, what popped into my mind is immediately, I'm like, what kind of car am I going to buy next? That's the first question that pops into my mind. Now, if you're buying software that helps you make better proposals and you're like, man, my proposals suck, that's the moment of inspiration. Your first question might be, how can I make my proposals look better? That's your trigger question. Your prime brand is the next thing that happens. Might be Google. You're going to type that into Google. And the first thing you should do as a brand is try to answer those trigger questions. So if you're going to create content, one of the 6 loyalty loop drivers is actually answer the trigger question. See it? Number 4 there. Answer trigger questions. So that's just I get too passionate about it. So if I'm going too deep, too fast, Chuck, you got to pull me back.
No, that's what what's replays are all about, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you've touched on a thing as a consultant, and I have clients who are consultants, and one of the things my colleagues talk about on a regular basis is, invoicing time. I've got to send that invoice out, and I know for a fact I can promise you, there's no client that I've had, anybody else has had, that looks at an invoice and go, great, I'm glad I see the invoice now. That's really wonderful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'll see if we can dig into this a little deeper, because there are a lot of folks who will watch this or listen on replay or whatever it may be. What is there is there something you can do when you send that invoice that then becomes that trigger question or whatever you want to make that better?
Yes. Okay. There are 2 things you must do, and they're both drivers. The best brands. Oh, sorry. Hold on.
No. Wait. I got it.
Okay.
Hang on.
Wait. Ready? You go, and then I'll go.
There we go.
When it comes to the 2 drivers you want to use, the first thing you need to do as a consultant, especially, is to maximize the honeymoon phase. See that number 2? That is one of the most important and underutilized loyalty loop drivers. So let me talk about that one first. Here's the deal. Anytime you do a good job for your client, right? You have a great call and they email you afterwards and say, that was such a great call. You know what? I was thinking about it last night, and this morning I made a bunch of changes, and you've been so helpful. This is really meaningful. Thanks so much. You need to celebrate that and maximize that honeymoon phase. You need to say and reinforce that like 2 days later. So you might respond and say, oh, I'm so glad it worked for you. But you need to reinforce it for longer so that you stretch out the honeymoon phase. So maybe this happened on Wednesday. They sent you the thank you note. Well, on Friday, you need to maximize the honeymoon phase and say, hey, I was just thinking about how successful you were on Wednesday. I want to make sure you're still feeling that kind of success. I hope you are. If you have any questions or there's anything else I can help with, let me know, because it reminds them to feel the way they felt when they sent that thank you note. Does that make sense, Chuck?
No, it makes total sense. Absolutely.
So you got to maximize the honeymoon phases. Anytime there's a big win, that's number one. Number two, and this is the more difficult one, and it's actually, oh, here, I'll put my drivers up again. Sorry.
There we go.
The next one is you want to actually re-inspire them, okay? That's number three. Now, re-inspiration is all about getting them to feel the way they felt at the honeymoon phase, right? So when you did a great job last month before you sent the invoice, you want to like just make note of those. Hey, there were 5 times they thanked me for great work, right? And when you send the invoice, you can either do this before or with the invoice, or even right after the invoice, I find works best, actually. You send a little note that says, working with you last month has been so much fun. Like, if I think about the high points or the successes we had, they were 1, 2, and 3, and 4. It's all the thank you notes you got this month that for them were just typed off on their phone like rapidly because they wanted to thank you. But for you, it's the reason you're charging this much for that experience. So as the minute they have that moment of inspiration and they go, oh my gosh, Chuck Hester is good, Chuck Hester is fast, but Chuck Hester is not cheap. Like, this is a very expensive invoice. You want them to get the next interaction from you, reinforcing the way they felt and reminding them how great it was, and say, hey, we had a great month. Remember we did this. You were so happy about that. We remember the feeling we had. And all of a sudden they're like, you know what? It's worth it. Chuck is worth it. And that's the key to maintaining, avoiding them going into what's called active evaluation, which is thinking about other brands that might be able to serve them for cheaper or faster or be better.
Yeah. And you described me to a T, by the way, just so you know. And bottom line is not cheap, but no, definitely worth it. And it's interesting too, because I had Bob Berg on, as you and I both know Bob very well. Great guy, and the Go Giver books are awesome. But that's one of the things that he talks about when getting referrals from customers is find the moment when you've done something really cool for them and say, okay, that worked really well for your company. Are there others that who could use that same type of service? Yeah, awesome.
Maximizing the honeymoon. Here's the key, though. Like what a lot of people forget when it comes to like building an experience like this is that every one of these encounters you can attach an emoji to, right? So if you set up a Calendly appointment to meet with someone and you just get the normal like automated Calendly response, I want you to attach an emoji to that experience. Are you just like, like, how does it make you feel, right? You want to build experiences that make people feel something with every encounter. So for me, a loyalty loop is a series of encounters that leave a positive impression. And it's all those little encounters that make that loyalty loop work. So, whenever you're maximizing the honeymoon phase, you've got to make sure that even the interaction and the way you ask for a referral at that moment makes them feel like this is a great experience. And so asking for a referral or getting a review or a testimonial is all about when you do it, not necessarily what you ask. You want to get them at the peak of their excitement and enthusiasm. It's the same thing, Chuck, if you want to re-up a contract, right? Like, yeah, maybe the contract ends in 3 months. But if you have a massive win and you've just made your client look like a hero at the organization, you want to ask for the contract right then. You want to maximize the honeymoon phase at that moment and say, hey, look, I know we're looking 3 months ahead, but I think we should obligate now to taking the next big step in our relationship, and let's talk about extending that relationship starting today.
Yeah, I think some of the brands that I use are either being consulted by you or understand that, where I get, hey, the subscription's coming up in 6 months, but let's do it now because we're having such a good time as far as that goes. Well, it's interesting too, Drew, because it's almost like you're in with bookends because I've got Bob Berg a couple of weeks ago. Next week, and we'll talk about this, is one of our favorites, and that's Marcus Sheridan. Who has the same philosophy that you and I have, which is, they ask, you answer. It's about the customer and their needs and what they're doing. So this is cool. We talked about this prior to the show.
Like the poster boy for answer the trigger question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and especially these days, with COVID going on, it's similar to 2008 when he
Yeah.
when he had his success. And we'll talk about that next week as well.
Yeah.
I've got a banner up that says loyaltyloopers.com, which is your website that you said put that one up. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna do something a little different. Instead of the end of the interview, let's do it now. You said you may have something for my listeners.
Yes. Yes.
And
For anybody that's tuning in, check out loyaltyloopers.com. Every week I do a YouTube video or a little video story, usually about, marketing and building a better loyalty loop, focusing on these 6 drivers and stuff, but they're really, really fun. So if you sign up for the loyalty loop and you enter a secret code, the secret code is $2 Chuck. $2 Chuck. The number 2 Buck Chuck. If you enter that secret code, I will send you something special. You'll get the automated response, but I'll go through them all this afternoon. And anytime you enter a $2 Chuck, I will send you a special gift.
All right, Drew. I want one of those too. So just so you know, I'll sign up for it. Not that I'm not already signed up for that kind of stuff. Okay, listen, brother. I'm gonna move on to something a little different for us, and let's talk about. We were going to talk about curiosity. You also speak on inspiration and curiosity. Totally get that. But we're living in an interesting time, and as you know, that used to be known as a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times, as far as that goes. And the new normal is never a phrase I use. It's the new reality and where we are as things shift and change. So we talked a little bit about this. You said your last in-person speech was in November timeframe, but you've been doing a lot of virtual. How has it affected, first of all, your business, but second of all, your clients' businesses? COVID.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll take mine first. So for me, starting in March, essentially with all the in-person events being either rescheduled or canceled, that was a big hit on our revenue. So we're down about, I think, a quarter, maybe more. I don't know. Elizabeth's not sitting at her desk, but we're probably down about 25 or 30% year over year from a revenue standpoint. But you know what? For me, I'm an eternal optimist. So like for me, I used to be constrained by days in the year. I had a limited number of days that were available to book me. And if I was already booked, I couldn't do the gig. Well, with the virtual world and when everything went virtual and, we built out the studio and I started trying to, rethink what virtual events were, I found it kind of fun and challenging and invigorating to have kind of a whole new opportunity in front of me, which was essentially increasing the number of gigs I could do. So, I did a lot more gigs last year than I would have ever been able to do in person. And sure, the per event fee isn't necessarily the same, although it's getting up there. It's getting a lot closer to what it used to be for a full live event, which is awesome. And as I look into 2021, I definitely see, a lot of the events that were postponed last May that were now supposed to be this May have now moved to in-person events in November. So the fall is going to be like the busiest travel schedule I've ever had in just a 3-month period, it looks like. Okay. So, and then lots of people are doing hybrid events. And when it comes to my clients, from an event producer's perspective, yes, they've had a really hard time generating the same kind of revenue for a virtual event because the competition is rough, right? The virtual world has kind of proliferated with virtual events. So some of the clients, like associations and membership organizations, have struggled, I think, to find the budgets they used to get and the sponsors they used to get. But on the other hand, corporations have been investing in this stuff and their budget seems to be just, very, very healthy. And some clients have booked me 3 or 4 times to done all my virtual speeches for them because they're hungry to teach their team and keep their team inspired and motivated, even though they're out of the office. So it's been a really interesting kind of transition. For me.
And for me as well. And we'll talk about this later, but with the Pay It Forward Tuesdays initiative that we've got going on, I gave a speech to Networking After Work last night, and somebody mentioned and said, I have more time now because I don't have a commute or I don't travel to see clients or whatever to give back to the community or pay it forward to the community. So there's a bunch of COVID blessings going on, man. There's no doubt about that as far as that goes. So
it's been amazing. Yeah. My mantra has been embrace the constraints. Like at first, I thought, what am I going to do? I'm really good on stage. I love a stage. I love to meet people. Like, this is going to be a disaster. And then I thought, wait a second, like, what can I do in a virtual world or in a constrained world that I couldn't do before? Well, you know what? I don't have to stay on stage. I don't have to just be in front of the camera. Like pieces of video behind me. I can like do fun stuff. That makes the story more exciting than ever before. Stuff that I never would have been able to do on stage, and that's what's made like this really, really fun. Oh, there's the loyalty loop, by the way.
Yeah.
That's my wife's closet. So like I never would have been able to shoot that or order a pizza while you're on stage. It just doesn't work. But when we're in the virtual world, we can do that. So on the professional side, embracing the constraints has been fun. And even on the personal side, I never had like a daily routine, and I'm a guy that loves a routine. So for me, I've been able to get healthier, and I exercise every morning, and I bought a VR headset, and I do like Supernatural, which is a VR exercise game that I love. So it's been really fantastic, to have those opportunities. And I know for a lot of people, it hasn't been easy, but I think the more we try to embrace the constraints and kind of work with them, the more creative our solutions come.
Yeah, I think you're right on that for sure. Let's turn to social media because I know you're actively involved in that. And I had my startup coach client on a couple of weeks ago. He's exited 5 companies, and the Monday before the Wednesday, he basically said, "I just quit Facebook and Twitter because I can't handle vitriol and I can't handle all the other stuff." And I'm on LinkedIn and my blog, and that's what it looks like. Where are you on social media, and what's your favorite platform?
Yeah, well, for me, oh man, that's a tough question. My favorite platform right now is TikTok, but I don't post on TikTok. My favorite to consume as a consumer is TikTok, but I get very little value out of it. Professionally, LinkedIn is unbelievably successful for me, and so I end up spending an inordinate amount of time on LinkedIn. And I've had to curtail like my interest and passion for posting on Instagram. Hasn't been that fruitful for me. And Facebook is the same way. And Twitter, I still do occasionally get involved with, but not very often anymore. Like as a marketer, I'm sure you can understand this, Chuck. But I think most of us that are in the marketing world anyway, I think the biggest challenge we have is deciding what not to participate in. And while it's a really tough decision, deciding to focus my energy and efforts on LinkedIn and just, I'll just check out Instagram occasionally, and I'll just check out Facebook on the personal front, and I'll enjoy TikTok over lunch. Like, these are hard decisions for me because I constantly am watching Instagram thinking, man, I bet I could make a big impact here. But focusing the effort on the right platforms with the right audience for me has always been much more successful than kind of spreading myself too thin.
It makes definite sense. Drew, I've told you this, and I told all of my interviewees that this was going to happen. But believe it or not, we're already moving towards the end of the 30. So a takeaway for my audience, other than loyalty loopers and the $2 check, as far as that goes, what's the give us a couple of takeaways for my guys out there that are listening and saying, and gals, and saying, okay, this Drew Davis guy, he's pretty cool, and this loyalty loop is interesting. So what can I take back to my home office now, or whatever? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I would suggest just one thing. Whatever you're about to do next, just ask yourself, whether it's an email or you're going to make a phone call or you've got a Zoom meeting to go to, just ask yourself, what impression do you want to leave with that next interaction? What emoji would you attach to the email you're about to send to a client or a prospect or even a coworker? What emoji do you want to attach to the phone call you're about to have? If you start asking that question, you'll start finding yourself creating better experiences, even on an interpersonal level, than you ever would before. So just ask yourself, what impression do I want to leave with my very next interaction? And you'll start building loyalty loops inside your organization, outside, even with your family. So that's all. I'll just leave you with one big takeaway. What impression do you want to leave with your very next interaction?
Well, if there No, yeah. Well, honestly, the aha, if you will, and that when I'm doing my LinkedIn training with my clients, I always look to the aha and they go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know I could do that," or those type of things are really cool for
Yeah.
me. But one of the things that I've implemented, and there's an organization called Lunch Club that does it automatically. But when I connect with somebody on LinkedIn, then I'll ask for a 15-minute phone call, and I send them my Calendly link. You have given me one thing that I need to do, which is add an emoji or something special to that
Make 'em
message,
feel
as
good.
opposed to
Yeah.
here's another calendar link, and why don't you have 15 minutes with me?
Yes.
So I greatly appreciate you for that, my friend, to be able to do that. And I think we've kind of figured this out as far as loyaltyloopers.com, but how can people get in touch with you? And
Sure.
by the way, I must say, before you answer that question, I must say to the person that I've had on and will have on, and I talk about this as far as influencers go, folks like Andrew and folks like Bob Berg, Marcus Sheridan, whatever, they're accessible, dude. And that's why you want to hang out with those people, because they are teaching people how to be accessible for your clients and your customers as well. So back to the question, how do you want to be
very accessible?
touch?
You can find my email address on my website, aka drewdavis.com. You can actually find my phone number there, so give me a call if you'd like. And one of the best places to connect with me is on LinkedIn. So I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn every day, and I'm always there. So, let me know if I can help in any way. If you have a question or an idea, or you just want to vent. I love people who are frustrated by something and wish there was a better solution. So let me know. Those are the best places to connect with me, though.
Drew, as usual, it's been a pleasure, man. When I do CMW, it's always one of those things where I go, okay, now I get to see all the cool people and hang out with them. And it's a 3-day hangout. I mean, it really honestly is,
It is
to
so
be able
much
to
fun.
do
I
that.
can't wait for
But
this year. I hope it's
yeah,
back in person.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And really to so enjoyed your series on planning for virtual events, Drew. That was a comment that just came in. So
Hey,
from a
thanks so
user.
much. Oh, I'm glad
And
you enjoyed it. That's awesome.
absolutely.
Part 4 drops tomorrow for you guys that are watching live. Wait, is
There
today
you
Wednesday? Yeah,
today's
tomorrow's
Wednesday.
for loyalty loopers. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
a friend of mine, by the way, has designated Thursday as Blur's Day. I mean, that's basically how it
That's
feels in
It's,
COVID,
I
right?
think every day is Blur's Day these days.
It
That's very
truly,
funny.
honestly is. But Drew, like I said, man, nothing that I didn't expect to have happen, but it's been an incredible pleasure. We will continue to stay in touch, and I'm going to see you in what is it, November? Whenever Content Marketing World is coming up,
Whenever it is, I'll
or
see you there.
or someplace else. We greatly appreciate you. Thank you for the time today, man.
Thanks, man. I had a blast. Thanks so much for doing this. It's a great idea, and good luck with the Tuesday initiative. It sounds awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So that is another edition of Conversations with Chuck Hester. That's me. So I wanted to, Drew gets me kind of, I don't know what the best way to say it, kind of hyped up to a certain extent. So I appreciate that time as far as that goes. But I want to also talk about, and Drew just mentioned it, onto our Pay It Forward Minute, and where we highlight cool things in the Pay It Forward movement. As you may know, if you're a regular listener, follower of my podcast and my content, Pay It Forward Tuesdays initiative is alive and well. Always have to shout out my Pay It Forward 5 of Adam Sinkus, Jennifer Radke, Bob Shears, Lori Marrero, and of course myself. Our newest Pay It Forward Tuesday recipient was announced last week, and that was the 3 o'clock project. And that's where folks who are underprivileged kids who are in school at 3 o'clock basically don't have food until the following morning. They have come forward and helped out in that regard, and they're starting to do that nationwide for not only after school meals, but summer meals as well at little or no cost. And during COVID, they were able to serve a staggering 6 million meals. And we'll be selecting another Pay It Forward Tuesday recipient every month in the third Tuesday of the month. And our nomination process is now open. So if you have someone who you think would be a good nominee, get in touch with me through LinkedIn. And I must also mention that our payitforwardtuesdays.org website is now live. So go take a look at that. It tells you how you can volunteer and help out, or how you can nominate somebody that might be of interest. And as far as other companies and organizations that want to help out with both the nonprofit and up and coming entrepreneur community, there is a chance for you to participate as well, because we are looking for sponsors that can provide products and services to the small business and entrepreneur community, and also the nonprofits. So contact me for more details on that as well. And I always want to thank my sponsor. And in this case, it would be Market Muse. Market Muse is where you can publish fearlessly using content intelligence. So that's another edition of Conversations with Chuck Hester. Next week on January 27th, as we've mentioned a couple times here, my guest is Marcus Sheridan, author of the Content Marketing Guidebook. And if you don't have this, find it. They ask you answer. Forbes listed this one as one of the 11 marketing books every CMO should read. Please feel free to share this podcast with your friends and your connections. The replays will post very soon on Facebook and my YouTube channel, and also on Anchor.fm. The audio of the podcast can be found on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and many other channels. Interested in learning more about how you can improve your marketing and LinkedIn presence? Contact me on LinkedIn and mention this podcast. You don't need to use the promo code $2BuckChuck. Just talk to me about that and mention the podcast, and we'll set up a 15-minute discovery call. I'll put an emoji in there as well. So that's it for this week. Until next time, this is Chuck Hester reminding you that if you need to be uplifted, uplift someone else first. It really works. Stay well, stay connected, and always pay it forward.